Hey everyone, we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Donnelly.
And I'm Dr. Hinson.
And we are here with your continuing coverage of things you can find online that we found interesting. So
what a title.
Today is HBO's documentary, The Inventor, which is the story of Elizabeth Holmes and her company, Theranos. If you are familiar with this story, you can fast forward for the next, 3 or 4 minutes as I explain it. And then you can join us in our ranting. But for anyone who's not, because while this is ubiquitous in certain circles, it's certainly...
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following this story since about 2015.
Yeah, it happened while we were, you moved back to America. I was still living in Northern Ireland, so this was not something that, got through...
I was also on Twitter at that point, and you weren't.
So. I was not on Twitter. That's true. If I had been on Twitter, I would have
heard of this.
I would have found it. But for several reasons, I had no idea what Dr. Donnelly was talking about when she suggested this documentary, and everybody needs to do this. Everybody needs to learn this.
If you are a documentary person, you can do this. If you are a book person, you need to read the book Bad Blood by John Carreyrou. John is who blew this story wide open. He writes for the Wall Street Journal, and his first article was put on them. The negative coverage was published in October of 2015.
Yeah.
It is behind a paywall because all of the Wall Street Journal is behind a paywall. So scamper to your library and get Bad Blood. Carve out about 5 hours of your life because you will not come up for air from this thing. It is insane. So Elizabeth Holmes is I legitimately think she's in her mid-30s. I think now, mid to late 30s now. She's like our age.
I think so, yeah.
I think she's close. She might even be younger than us.
She might be late 20s.
Annoying. She looks like she's blonde hair, blue-eyed. She has artificially lowered her voice to sound more masculine, which is fascinating.
And apparently trained herself not to blink very much.
Yeah, so that she could stare people down and ask for more money.
Which is so creepy.
Beyond. Oh, okay. So Elizabeth Holmes is a Stanford dropout. Who
no degree.
Became enamored with Steve Jobs.
When she was like 7.
And therefore only dresses in black turtlenecks. And wanted to be the Steve Jobs of healthcare. She is also deathly afraid of needles.
Very important part of this.
And so at some point in life decided that she could create a machine and a company that could do all your basic blood tests from a finger prick blood sample.
And a very small amount of blood.
Several things.
Nano containers, they were called.
Yes.
Very small.
Several problems. It's not physically possible to do that.
Nope. Biologically.
You need a lot of blood to run a lot of tests.
Because there's like cross-contamination. You have to do things to the blood to get them to test them.
There's a reason why there are sometimes that there's reasons why there hasn't been innovation in an area.
Yeah, she talks about at the beginning, like the fact that we're still using these machines that were, built in the 1960s. It's because we still need to. Yeah, our parent company makes a couple histology products that are stains that test for cancer. And there's a new product, testing mechanism coming on the market for that, which is wonderful and does in fact really, really reduce cross-contamination and is much, much safer. It is still approximately the size of like a wall. Like it's still really, really tall. Smaller doesn't mean better.
Smaller does not mean better. So what she wanted is to create a device that people could test their own blood in their homes.
And have control over their own blood testing.
Yeah. So she started this company called Theranos, which is she explains it's a dumb name. It's a combination of therapy and something with whatever. I have zero time for this woman. And I actually have less than zero time for this woman because she damaged people's lives with her hubris. So this documentary is a rant. So anyway, Elizabeth Holmes raised billions of dollars.
The company at its height was worth $10 billion.
$10 billion.
$10 billion.
They never, ever invented a successful product. She never was forced to show numbers to any of the people that invested.
No, they never asked for a quarterly financial report. Ever.
Some of these people included people like Rupert Murdoch and Henry Kissinger.
General Mattis. Several other former secretaries of state.
So we can talk about how people want to give, there's a couple but the themes, the fetishization of pretty women too, trustworthy.
Big problem.
She looked the part.
Like, I don't have the time or energy to get in the fact that she was very Aryan looking.
Yeah, but she was.
But she was.
And is. I mean, she's not dead.
She's not. She's alive.
She's, I think, potentially, hopefully in prison right now. But anyway.
Still under investigation.
Still under investigation. So she creates this company, gets in with Silicon Valley, is on the cover of Fortune magazine, is named like a lot. Like, I remember she first started becoming a big deal in like 13, 14, I think. And I remember, I follow business journals and articles, and I had a subscription to Business Insider at that point. And like, she was all over the place.
She was everywhere.
And every time I would talk about being a woman, future woman in business, everyone would be like, oh my God, you need to meet Elizabeth Holmes. I mean, like, she was.
Could you imagine if you had met her?
I probably would have punched her in the face.
Oh my God.
Because I would have been like, human voices don't sound like that. What are you doing?
Also, can you show me that you've been able to do this?
Yeah, that would be my question. I'd be like, so I have been professionally sick for a long, long time. I want to see the numbers. Mm-hmm. But like, they put these machines into Walgreens, and there's no evidence-based practice that any of this worked. So important is that at no point in time did Elizabeth obtain any sort of medical degree.
Nope.
The person that she hired to be her lab manager quit, and then
he had not quit, but was named in a lawsuit and was so anxious about speaking in the lawsuit and potentially losing his job that he took his own life. And he was the senior biochemist.
Yep.
So in the lab.
Things start unraveling. People start whistleblowing. And to this day, Elizabeth still claims that nothing she did was wrong.
And that the tech worked. That's the amazing thing.
She still claims the tech works. They were running, instead of, like, they were taking people's blood and then running them on commercially available machines instead of their own machines because their machine didn't work.
On the old method that she claimed she was going to get rid of.
And the problem with that is that the old method requires a whole lot of blood.
A whole lot more blood.
And so they were falsifying. Lab technicians who were not trained were unintentionally falsifying reports for things like syphilis and pregnancy,
cancer,
and like
blood disorders,
prostate cancer, blood disorders,
thyroid problems, like all the things you can test with blood. So as we're filming this in 2019, the company has been dissolved
completely because the regulatory agency in California that oversees labs shut them down. After a very brave and delightful whistleblower, and her smile when you find out that everything worked is worth the documentary.
It's great. So there were.
This is a great sit, by the way.
Yeah, the ship starts to sink. People start to jump, and that's how this article gets written in the Wall Street Journal as people start contacting the journalist. But there were a couple of things,
and we should say this too. People were not going to the press because the NDAs and the non-competes that Theranos had them sign were ironclad. Now, NDAs are not a big deal. I mean, we sign NDAs here at Abbey Companies because we do own proprietary information. Mm-hmm. But we don't hire the same lawyer that Harvey Weinstein hired to go after people. No one has ever violated their NDA here, but I'm fairly sure we would start with a conversation.
So as we're filming this, she has yet to suffer any legal consequences, although she is under investigation. I think she's under investigation. But for me, there were a couple of things that the documentary talks about that makes it really, really interesting, aside from just the case study itself, which is fascinating. So they really frame it as, and it's called The Inventor, Out for Blood in Silicon Valley. And they start the documentary really by laying the groundwork for our fetishization and our fascination and our heroicization of inventors of things.
She's been indicted.
There we go.
Yeah.
But not convicted, I don't think.
On 9 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud for distributing blood tests with falsified results to consumers.
Dangerous.
Along with her COO and ex-boyfriend. They're the same person.
Yeah. So for me, it highlights really this myth of the eccentric genius.
Yeah.
That we kind of love to foster. And my background in art history, we do it all the time. You know, the myth of the eccentric, the troubled artist. Like, everybody loves Picasso and Van Gogh because of their perceived mental health issues impacting the production of their work. Jackson Pollock also very famously. But we do it with inventors as well, creators, full stop. And so they really set her up, and people start setting her up as like the next Beethoven, the next Steve Jobs. It's going to be the Apple of healthcare. So that's really problematic. And then on top of that, this fascinating culture of Silicon Valley, which I don't know a whole lot about.
I mean, I'm going to call it toxic.
It looks like a crazy place to live and work.
Like, I'm happy to be on the other side of the country from it.
What kind of investors are they called?
Angel? Nope.
No, it's
venture capital.
Venture capitalists. So like this whole venture capitalist culture, a couple of the investors they talk to for this documentary talk about the need to be in on the ground floor of something and invest in something. So that's how she tapped into that, knowing that she could get people to give her money without evidence because they all want to be in on the next iPhone, which is a really unhealthy way, I think, to fund anything.
Healthcare, especially.
Especially when healthcare. So that was really disturbing, and how quickly she got really, really big names, and also then how, as a society and a culture, we give power and validation to people when they get support from big names. So the fact that Rupert Murdoch was investing, the fact that Henry Kissinger was on the board.
She started getting more and more and more. Like once Walgreens said yes, everybody else said yes.
Everybody else said yes. She was really popular with the Obama administration, and with like the Clinton Foundation was a huge funder and supporter of her work. And she never showed anyone that the machine worked. And then in the documentary, they show you how much the machine didn't work. So it draws a lot of questions off for us in terms of that culture.
But then also, when you have to keep secrets at the level at which she had to keep secrets.
Let's talk about toxic culture.
Your culture becomes toxic. That's how it works. So she had to pit employees against other employees because the minute someone got suspicious, they had to be gone.
Yeah.
Ironically, about 2 days before we saw this documentary, we went to go see the musical Anastasia, which takes place in the early parts of the Bolshevik Revolution. And the opening song talks about it's really very friendly if you don't mind spies.
If you don't mind spies.
And we kept singing that to each other throughout this particular documentary because I'm sure Theranos was a lovely place to work if you didn't mind being reported on.
Yeah, and because some of the whistleblowers talked about their emails being tracked.
Yeah, they were everybody, even the secretaries were getting keystroked.
So that they knew what you were typing into your computer.
Even if you had delete. So if you don't know what keystroking is, it's software that employers, and like, it's usually within your employment contract if you're being keystroked. So there are, like, I know there are employees at Google that are keystroked because like, it's really important. But, so you usually know.
Yeah, and all of this was done without
consent
consent or knowledge, which is horrible.
So they literally they just track every time you hit delete. Like, they get reports of like, they typed this and then they deleted it. They typed this and then so.
And we also spent a lot of time in our hats here at Abbey Research talking about toxic culture. So there's a lot of lessons here about how you build trust with an organization, how you build trust with your people, how you support them. They all went to her. And fascinatingly, one of the big whistleblowers, one of the main ones, he said, he was working in the lab and nothing was working.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is unbelievable. We can't do this with people's blood. This isn't going to work. And he was like, I would spend all this time thinking like, this is not working. And he said, I would go and meet with Elizabeth. And it was like she had this magic power to make me feel like I would go complain to her about this, and she would convince me that everything was working and everything would be fine. And that's, we talk a lot about honesty and transparency and vulnerability, and she is none of those things with her people. And the other thing that really struck us was we talk a lot about how your vision and strategy
need to
match.
A really important first step in that is to figure out if your vision is actually possible according to the laws of physics. So just a real quick double check with Newton that it's possible.
Yeah, because her first advisor at Stanford very tellingly said, no, it's literally not possible to do what you want to do.
Who was a lady, by the way.
And she was amazing. And she said this to Elizabeth repeatedly. Elizabeth kept coming back. No, but I want to do this. No, you're not listening. The laws of physics and biomedical
and histology
and all of we can't do it. So
also, you're not a scientist.
Also, yeah. So eventually, Elizabeth just persisted until she found an advisor at Stanford who did believe it was possible.
And we talk about this sometimes in business as like a thing you should praise, like ignore the people that say no and find somebody until they say yes. No. Listen to the people that are saying no. Ask yourself why they're saying no. Yeah. If they have a good point, if they're saying no because they're jerks, then yes, ignore them and find somebody who says yes.
Yeah.
But if they're saying no because, physics doesn't let you do the thing you want to do, maybe listen to them.
Yeah. And people would go to her because it's a very small box. It's like the size of a printer that was supposed to do all of this blood testing. And they realized that it wasn't going to work as they start building prototypes. And they go to her and they say, the box needs to be bigger. And she's like, no, it has to be small. So like, not everything small is good. Listen to people when they say, can we talk about adjusting this strategy to make it work?
Yeah. Centrifuges have to be a certain size in order for the spinning to reach the velocity it needs to spin at to separate the hemoglobin.
This girl doesn't have a science degree. She understands enough about blood testing to know that.
I mean, I have in fact just had my blood drawn.
Yeah.
A time or two.
And so it really reminded us, if you saw on our YouTube channel, or if not, you can find it in the link below, when we talked about the Fire Festival.
Yes.
Very, very similar circumstance of vision and strategy, and just getting rid of people that said no to you. And the dude from the Fire Festival, anytime somebody said this wasn't going to happen, they were fired. And she pushed people out. Both through
and really bullying tactics too,
bullying people,
would hire private investigators to follow people around town and scare them, and it's just very, very. I mean, there are lots of articles like, if you want to fall down an Elizabeth Holmes rabbit hole, have fun. You won't surface for a while, because I say that from experience.
Tell your friends and family where you are.
Yeah, like leave a bell tied to your ankle like they do in the High Temple, there's lots of speculation as to her mental health. Like, is she a sociopath? Is she a narcissist? Is she both? Is she, what is she? And of course, diagnosing from afar is always a problem, and yet a fun game.
Without any sort of degree that would allow us to do that.
So we're all armchair psychologists. Yeah. But something is not right with her.
Because even after this huge expose in the Wall Street Journal, she went out that day and said.
To a Wall Street Journal festival.
And said, no, the tech works.
They're lying.
And what it was amazing, what she said was, we spoke to, we as in Theranos, spoke to the whistleblowers, and the whistleblowers told us
they were misquoted.
They were misquoted in the Wall Street Journal. And so she just lied. She went on at this massive media conference and straight up lied. They lied about the other thing that was really horrible was military contracts. Lied about having military contracts. So her response when confronted with any sort of problem is to lie. I don't know what that makes you, but with a psychological disorder, but it's not good. And it's certainly not something we should be elevating onto that lofty white pedestal of famous inventor, eccentric genius.
Yeah, so it's a cautionary tale.
Yes.
And a lot of schadenfreude, because she does get destroyed. And the bad guys don't often go down in flames. So I would like her to be in jail and not engaged to a hotel heir and living in a luxury apartment in San Francisco.
We would like consequences for these actions.
But she did lose her company, and she is now publicly and eternally disgraced. And the more we make these stories, and John Carreyrou is not going anywhere, I'm okay with the fact that she's never, ever going to get the fame she wants.
Yeah.
And thankfully, most of the people whose blood they messed up, it was rectified by proper blood tests.
They were refunded.
LabCorp made sure everything was okay. Quest Diagnostic made sure everything was okay. I read somewhere, and I can't remember where, but all of the Walgreens were in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And Quest Diagnostic in Arizona essentially said, if you come in with your receipt from Theranos, we'll run everything for free to make sure that you are safe.
Yeah.
And so people stepped up and made sure everything was okay. But if you have HBO Go or a friend with an HBO Go password, we cannot recommend this one highly enough.
No.
It's made by Alex Gibney, who you may remember from making Going Clear, the documentary on Scientology. So professionally, it's professional.
Yeah, it's
a really, really well done piece of art.
It's a well told story. They make excellent use of graphics, and
And archive footage.
And, we've watched a lot of documentaries recently. One of them we're not reviewing for this was Finding Neverland, which would overly used drones to a point of nauseating both Dr. Donnelly and I. So it's just visually done very well. If you haven't seen Going Clear, you should watch that too.
Immediately. We also will not be covering that on this. Please don't ask. Please watch the documentary.
Please watch it anyway. So yeah, as a piece of art, visually very engaging. As a story, you're just slack-jawed the whole time. It's crazy. And if you're just watching it, as we did also from a business mind, there's a lot of lessons you can take from it too, practically. And
due diligence, accountability, learning to hear the word no, being a decent person,
being a listener,
not gambling with people's lives for your own ego. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Endless amounts of life and business lessons.
And so for that, we are and remain the good doctors of Abbey Research. I am Dr. Donnelly.
I am Dr. Hinson.
And we will see you next time. Bye. Bye.